Nats fans, and welcome back to another episode of the DoDcast Postgame Show. I'm your host, District on Deck co-editor Ricky Keeler, along with my fellow co-editor, Ron Juckett. Ron, how are you?
Hello. How are you?
Could be better. Could be better. The Nats' last 25 hitters go down in order. They get 2-hit shutout by Kyle Hendricks, Pedro, Carl Edwards Jr., and Wade Davis as the Cubs win 3-0. They lead game one. Well, they lead the best of 5, 1-0. They win game one. And it leaves the Nats searching for answers because it was a night where the Nats' big hitters did not show up and the Cubs' big hitters did. And it ruined an all-time classic performance by Steven Strasburg, who at least quieted his own playoff demons from being shut down 5 years ago. Ron, just before we dive into the specifics and the totals, your initial takeaways from game one.
Well, as you said, Strasburg pitched the game of his life and got absolutely nothing to show for it. And mental mistakes by Anthony Rendon and Bryce Harper cost him the game.
That's really some of it. The Nats are making a lot of mental mistakes. You had the Rendon error, as you mentioned. Harper trying to be a hero and throw the ball home to Baez, which allows Bryant to get to second, which leads to the RBI by Rizzo. And then Ryan Zimmerman, which you can argue if that's the right call. That looked like the right call, that him getting hit by Contreras after the strikeout. And it just adds to the era of frustrations for Ryan Zimmerman, who's, I'm sorry to keep bringing up the stat, but we got to bring it up. He's 8 for his last 61 against the Cubs.
No.
It gets to a point where it's starting to look like it's in his head, and I don't know if he's going to get out of it.
Well, in the play in the ninth, Zimmerman was clearly out of the baseline.
Mm-hmm.
He was running in fair territory. If you're going to be out, run around into foul territory and go that way. And so when the ball hit him, I mean, it's a judgment call, but if you look at the replays, he started that clearly 10, 15 feet inside the baseline. And I don't think Dusty Baker did all that well tonight either. You called this on Twitter earlier I think it was the 6th inning, when they should have intentionally walked Baez to force Hendricks out of the game. And so Hendricks got to go another inning because of that. There was no one behind Madsen in the 8th inning when he got into trouble, so he gave up a run. I mean, just little nitpicky things that they do. I mean, would you have pinch hit Lind instead of Hendrick?
I think the only risk you would have ran with Lind is bringing the lefty Dunsing, which we looked it up. Lind is actually 3 for 9 against Brian Dunsing in his career. I don't know how far back that goes because Dunsing was in the American League with Minnesota. So I don't know if Lynn's seen him this year or not. I didn't get really a chance to look at those numbers. But it's not like Howie Kendrick was a terrible second option.
I mean, it wasn't terrible.
He's a guy you put the ball in play, you put 2 runners on base for Trey Turner, who can easily slap a base hit and score 2. I don't think Dusty at that point, he sees both guys. He doesn't want to burn Adam Lind, but he runs the risk of not using him. I don't think Dusty did anything that would get you fired tonight, but I just think in the end it just comes down to got to get hits.
Well,
you have to get hits.
On the other hand, he didn't do anything to quiet his critics.
No.
But again, he's not the one responsible for Rendon making an error on the play. I mean, there are clearly foul balls that Rendon will throw over to first, and he just took his eye off it for a second and botched the play. Dusty wasn't Zimmerman who hit in that double play where the Nats actually had something going off of Kendricks. You can't blame him for that, and you can't blame him for Bryce Harper trying too hard. It was a team loss tonight, except for Steven Strasburg, who pitched. Now, granted, the Expos didn't have that many playoff games, but 10 strikeouts is a franchise record.
I was about to say, who had that Expos record? I was wondering that during the game, but it was never mentioned.
Either probably a Rudy May or a Steve Rogers.
Well, let's look at the totals. We'll get into the chat. I see a lot of comments here. We'll touch on everything.
You do.
Cubs with 3 runs, 5 hits, 1 error. The Nats, no runs, 2 hits, 1 error. The lone hits from Harper, the single in the first, and Taylor, the single in the second. Kyle Hendricks gets the win. 7 innings, 2 hits, 6 strikeouts, 3 walks on 106 pitches, 69 strikes. Steven Strasburg, the loss, but really didn't deserve a loss. 7 innings, 2 runs, none of them earned on 3 hits, struck out 10, walked 1 on 81 pitches, 60 strikes, and that ratio was much better after like 5 innings. Wade Davis gets the save. Ryan Madsen gives up a run in the 8th. We'll get into that. And Brandon Kinsler throws a scoreless ninth, couldn't get a double play on Baez. Let me get with the chat here. I want to bring up something that John's talking about. John the Third's here. Absolutely no adjustments by our hitters or coaches. Changeups low and away all night, and they just kept rolling over. Now, I think John, you got to give a little bit of credit to Hendricks. There's a reason why he's dominated the Nats in the 6 starts that he's had. His pitches, his fastball looks pretty similar to his changeup. He doesn't really have a vast velocity difference. The only frustrating thing I would say, and I think, John, it is to your point, they take a lot of pitches up in the zone, and against a guy that is looking to get ground balls, those are the pitches you should be swinging at. That was
pretty well commented on during the game by a lot of people on Twitter, Ricky, that they just watched too many good pitches. They were making Hendricks throw, but they weren't they weren't making good at bats about it. Except for Taylor, he had like a 10 pitch at bat early, but beyond that, the commenter is absolutely right. Just did not swing at pitches they should have and watched them for strikes.
Let's talk about Steven Strasburg. The big question with him is going to be how he handled pitching in his first playoff game since 2014, and he looked probably the best he's ever looked. And that's including the 15 strikeout game against San Diego this year. That's including the debut against Pittsburgh. From the get-go, he's throwing 98 to Rizzo. He's mixing in the changeup. He gets a no-hitter into the 6th inning, and then everything just backfires. And really, the only thing you could say they made a mistake on was he shouldn't have thrown an 0-2 fastball up to Chris Bryant. But really, besides that, that's what you want. And if the Nats don't advance, at least you know Steven Strasburg, when he's on his A game, can beat anybody in the game.
I voted for him in my Cy Young vote. He got it. And the way he closed out the season, into the 34 scoreless innings, got much more emotionally involved in games. I mean, he clearly was the Nats' best pitcher the second half of the year, and frankly deserved it. I mean, obviously, if Scherzer was healthy, he would have gotten it on his reputation. But frankly, Strasburg deserved the game one start and showed you why.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, there's nothing really he did that lost the game. I mean, his breaking ball was great. Changeup, which has been his best pitch, I would say, since the second half, has been dominant. Nothing really you can do. I mean, it's sad. They're 22 and they've only lost 7 games counting tonight in games he started. There's a reason why they've been that good. So we want to take a look at Dusty's moves. We talked about a couple of them. Let's look at the 8th inning. I think the first move we want to start, a lot of people bring up in the chat about Ryan Madsen. But you can make the argument that John Jay gets a pinch hit double to lead off the 8th. Now, we don't know if Victor Robles or Brian Goodwin get to that ball, but down 2 runs late in the game, and Wirt's turn at bat has already passed. Don't you have to, with all the outfielders they took on the playoff roster, bring in another player?
Why you have 6? It's why you have 6 outfielders out there, and even if you go in with Goodwin, who hasn't had a bat, he's at least going to be fine in the field. There was no reason for Wirth to be out there at that point. Like I said, sorry about that, Rick. I didn't really see enough of replays on that play to know if Wirth would have made a difference, but he should never have been in the situation that should have even been an issue.
A lot of people are bringing up the decision to leave Madsen in to face Rizzo, which led to the RBI. I think if Madsen had gotten behind to Rizzo, he would have walked him. He had 2 strikes on him. I think you have to give Rizzo credit for a double down left field line. And you could say, well, bring in the lefty, Oliver Perez. All right, so you bring in Oliver Perez. Oliver Perez gives a hit. You're all yelling about leaving Madsen in the game. Madsen is your 8th inning guy. You got here because of what Ryan Madsen has done, what Brandon Kinsler has done, and what Sean Doolittle has done. You didn't get here from what Oliver Perez has done. I said it during the game, and for those who don't disagree with Dusty Baker, I'm sorry. Your players need to play better. Casey Stern brought it up with me during the week, and I kind of agree with him. Dusty gets the most blame because his players don't get the hits that the other guys do. There comes a point where your guys have to play. You have to put them in a position to make a play, and then they have to make a play. I don't really have a huge issue with leaving Madsen in there, and he's been there reliable in the 8th inning all season.
Yeah, the execution tonight by the team as a whole. Not saying, Dusty made some mistakes, but a lot of people made mistakes tonight, and that's why they're they're in some real trouble now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll get into that in terms of what we think of the series going forward. I see a lot of Michael Taylor, Judo. I would agree. I think he had a good game tonight.
He had a very good game tonight. He
gets a base hit, reaches on an error. I would have ruled that a hit, but was ruled an error. But he had some good at bats too. Worked the count full a couple of times.
Yeah, 10 pitch at bat at one point, didn't he? Yeah.
I'd have to get the numbers, and I'll try to load that real quick. But he was one of their more patient hitters tonight, along with Worth and Rendon.
I mean, if you were to look at the two people you might have had question marks going into game one would be Strasburg. How amped would he be before this playoff start? And Taylor, who tends to can be really streaky. They both gave you everything that you would ask them to and more.
Absolutely.
I mean, Harper's first at bat tonight, he had the hit. I mean, that was a good sign too. But the whole tenor to me changed when Zimmerman hit into that double play.
It was a Zimmerman double play in the fourth, and I know Seth said this. Why do I keep saying that stat? Seth, I'm going to keep saying that stat until he gets a base hit. It's just the way it goes. You have to be fair. The numbers speak for themselves. It's not 10 at bats; it's 60 at bats. It comes to a point where you have to wonder. And I don't think Dusty's going to make this move. I mean, when eventually does Dusty, in a late game situation, maybe tomorrow night, pinch hits Adam Lynn for Ryan Zimmerman?
I would think if you're going to do that, you would do that in a double switch. I think you would pinch hit Lynn for a pitcher and then make the quote-unquote defensive move.
Right. I would agree. Baker's not going to make a move that singles out a player.
He's not one that's out to embarrass anybody.
Let's put it this way. He left Danny Espinosa in for all 5 games last year. If he's going to do that, he's not going to replace anybody significant and embarrass them like that.
Right.
It would have to really pay off if you do that. Taylor saw 11 pitches and 3 at-bats. Rendon saw 22. So he had outside of the error. We'll get to that error. That was a weird – and Rendon hadn't made an error since July. He has to make that play. But what the heck's Laz Diaz doing? Yeah. I mean, that had to confuse Rendon while trying to make that play.
It's one of the things about having all-star crews as opposed to just breaking up some of the lesser crews. I mean, they all work together over the course of the regular season, except for in the playoffs. They're an all-star crew. Think of it this way. Angel Hernandez is sitting in the Boston-Houston series. As bad as Laz Diaz is, not as bad as Angel Hernandez.
Yeah, absolutely. Hernandez had Dan Bellino. I think he had a bad game yesterday, too. There's not been great umpiring in this playoffs so far, for sure. Not a reason why they lost, but just has been bad umpiring. Judo brought this up, and it's the elephant in the room, so we'll talk about it. Do you think the controversy surrounding the batting coach affected the Nats at all tonight? Now, the news, about a half hour before first pitch, the Washington Post reports that Jock Jones, the Nationals actually, I think, announced this, that Jock Jones has been suspended with pay for a legal issue. One of their assistant minor league guys coming over to be the hitting coach for Jones. I'm not sure if it had an impact in the game, but it's probably the last thing you want before a big game to come out like that.
We talked about distractions before. It was one of the key reasons why I thought they had to deal with Dusty Baker's extension before the playoffs, because now there'll be all sorts of questions about that, especially if they don't make it. But it didn't help. I mean, I think the layoff probably between the 4-day layoff, which I think really hurt Harper to some extent, and this, I mean, you just don't need that kind of stuff going on in the back of your mind going into a game.
Not at all. And the Dusty report was that Bob Nightingale, the USA Today reported earlier today that the Nats are hoping to get a 2-year extension done with Dusty Baker at the end of the year. But that distraction's somewhat lifted, but begs the question, and again, I asked this question to guys that you don't like Dusty. Who are you hiring? Give me a name. Don't just say you want to fire somebody, just fire somebody. But it gets to the point, Ron, where if the Nats do get swept, it'd be really tough to bring Dusty Baker back.
Well, you and I have talked to enough people within – I don't want to pretend that we're organization insiders by any stretch, But we talk with people. We have our own people. Our people have people. And you're never going to find anyone in baseball who says a bad word about Dusty Baker as a person and Dusty Baker as a manager. I mean, there's not been one peep. There was never a peep this year from the clubhouse. And we've talked about this before. He is absolutely, if you're looking for someone to think long-term, Dusty Baker is your guy. And they don't win the division as easily without him. You don't juggle 13 injuries without that sort of stability. But as far as the chess, I wrote about this, Ricky, in my 5 reasons why they could lose the series piece. He's not a good chess tactician. And there wasn't anything that Joe Madden beat him at tonight. But the little creepy doubting things just kind of adds on to everything else. And you can certainly see why people aren't necessarily in love with every move that he makes. And since the Nats won't decide either way till after the series, it just kind of puts more pressure on them to justify what they want to do.
Let's put it this way. I don't think Dusty Baker made the worst managerial decision of the night.
No.
We'll get into that. And the guy I think had some really dumb comments afterwards.
Are you talking about a certain New York one?
I'm talking about that, and I read the comment that he made for the decision, and I'm going to go crazy on him for that in a second.
It's not John Farrell. If Al's in the chat, it's not John Farrell. How about that? He gave up on that series before it started, but that's another story.
All right, so we're going to address here because Seth has a comment talking about Victor Robles. No, we're not benching Bryce Harper. Okay, there's nobody's even John brought up here. Ryan Zimmerman and Jason Wirth flat out shouldn't be starting a playoff series.
No, I disagree with that.
I think Dusty's even talked about it that I could see Wirth a game if Dusty likes the matchup. That's it. Ryan Zimmerman got you here. Bryce Harper got you here. They're playing. It's called time to play to the back of your baseball cards and go out there and get hits.
Zimmerman had 36 home runs this year, which is a career high for him. He drove in over 100 runs. He's a legitimate MVP candidate.
And he's a good postseason hitter. He had a good postseason last year.
If you want to quibble with should he be in there, Zimmerman deserves to play 9 innings or until Lynn pitch hits. Then you can make a decision based on where you were in the game. Now, if you want to talk about Wirth being the first man, I was kind of bothered by the fact that they made no in-game changes tonight. If you want to make the argument that Wirth should be playing after the 7th inning, I'll agree with that.
That I agree with.
But no,
Wirth's finish done. You take him out.
But I mean, Wirth did at the plate what you expected him to do. He worked counts. That's what he's there for.
Dodgers, by the way, have broken that game open against Taijuan Walker. It's 3-0 in the first. So not a good start for Arizona, who probably wishes they had Robbie Ray in that one.
Yeah, and you got the Kershaw robot going tonight too. So
never good with the Kershaw robot in the mound. I'm trying to think if there's anything that we've missed in this game, but I think it really just comes down to. I guess we'll just wait to see if Dusty makes some comments, and we'll try to react to them as they go. It's a 3-run homer by Justin Turner, by the way.
Oh, good.
Nats are too familiar with that.
Yeah, that's enough to go. That's it's regular iced tea I have in this cup that you can kind of see. It's not on Long Island, but it could be by tomorrow. And it goes back to the old Tampa Bay Buccaneers coach when they started their NFL stuff at NFL franchise at 0-27. What do you think of their execution? And John McKay said, "I'm all for it." It really just kind of came down tonight to the Nats had chances to execute and didn't. And you can't put that on Dusty.
Let me bring up something Judo mentioned. Mm-hmm. I think maybe you can bring this up on Dusty.
Okay.
It's Dusty's fault for Bryce Harper not getting RBIs. I think, Judo, you're talking about where Bryce is in the lineup. You got Dusty now talking about during the game, I got to get his timing, and I think later in the series we'll move him down to get RBI chances. There's no later in the series. You're a best of 5. Either you're putting him in the middle of the order or you're not putting him in the order. Now's not the time to worry about where his timing is or everything is. You got to put your best lineup out there and not worry about timing. And it's clear Harper, looking at his at-bats, at least in the first inning, the timing is better. You have to give him a position to drive in runs. and allow Trey Turner, when he eventually gets on base, to steal. I didn't really like the explanation that Dusty had for that move.
You've harped on this, ha ha ha. Since we talked about this, you can laugh. It's okay. It is a game.
Oh, sorry, Judo's being sarcastic. I'm not. I actually disagree with Dusty on this one.
You talked about this last week. I mean, you do not want to take the one thing that the Nats do very well, which is steal bases. And okay, so there was 2 double steals last week with Harper on the back end of it. But what it does, it limits what Turner could do on first base or second base with Harper at the plate. You can't immediately after. And now you're kind of and now you're behind the 8 ball because you went out there and pitched a decent, had an incredibly pitched game, and you couldn't give anyone a run.
All right, so let's take a look. We'll look into the other couple games that happened today, which I'm sure Ron and I are thrilled about to talk about those games.
8-2, Houston over the Red Sox. That was only a 9-inning game that lasted.
We'll get into it. I don't feel like getting into it right now. Let's take a look at Game 2 tomorrow, because Ron's going to be tweeting with you, and I'll host the post game with. I'll help. I should be here with them at least for it. Gio Gonzalez goes for the Nats. Gio 15-9 with a 2.96 during the regular season against John Lester. 13-8 with a 4.33. We all know, though, how tough John Lester is in the postseason. We talked about it in our preview show last night. So what's the expectations for Gio Gonzalez tomorrow? Because I don't think they're going to be very high among the fans. And his playoff start last year wasn't good, and he's yet to win a playoff game in 5 career postseason starts.
Realistically, if he could get what you would call a quality start, so 6 innings and 3 earned runs, I think you take that and run. It's Gio, so he's going to make you scare the hell out of you. It is October, it is that month. So he's going to walk a couple more than you're comfortable with, and he won't strike out a ton. And hopefully the breaking stuff works, and he'll do some double plays. But as I said, if we get in the 6th inning and the Cubs have 3 or less on the board, I think you take it. The question is, what are the Nats going to do offensively? Because as you just saw, it doesn't matter how well you pitch. Pitching will win you championships, and it didn't do the Nats any good tonight.
Gio earlier this year against the Cubs, 6 innings, 1 run, 2 hits, did give up a home run to Contreras, struck out 8 and walked 5. He does that again, it's going to be more than 1 run. That's really the problem. Gio's a guy that's thrived this year on getting guys out at men scoring position. That's the last thing you want to do in the postseason. And that's the last thing, honestly, you want to do in front of this crowd, which I don't blame the crowd tonight for getting dejected so easily. The Nats, Ron Drawing said on the last point before we hopped on here, in their 9 home playoff games, they've scored 23 runs. So there's really nothing for the fans to cheer over. And the longer this game stayed scoreless, the more fans went from excited to expecting the worst. And we try to calm down the negative people on Twitter, but Nats have to give them something to change their mind, and they haven't.
I mean, the game was over when Rendon misplayed that ball at third. And last year in Game 5, when Worth was thrown out trying to score, I hadn't been with the team that long, or with you guys that long. And come on, it's a 1-run game or whatever. But tonight I really felt watching. I was like, nope, that's it. You had the most unlikely person on the team make the boo-boo, and they could never recover from it. And those are the things that the Nats have to overcome if they're going to get to that next level. And it's real tough. Ricky wouldn't know about this being a Yankee fan, but as someone who grew up in New England, when I was a kid, we always had the Celtics to get us through, for championships. But it would be, well, here's a good case in point. When in 2003, when Pedro Martinez did that, was Grady Little, we saw that coming a mile away. I mean, that's how it ended for Boston every year. And so I understand that mentality. It's like, oh, great. Well, how are we going to screw this up tonight? But you're looking across the way at the dugout as a team that broke a curse that was much longer and deeper than what the Nats have gone through with the Cubs last year. It can happen. You put good teams on the field eventually. It won't always end against you, but someone has to come up and perform in the clutch. Today on Facebook, someone posted a video of them in the stands the night of Game 4 of 2012 and matched it with Charlie and Dave's call on the radio of the Worth walk-off homer. I mean, just like what Ryan Zimmerman did against the Dodgers on Sunday night, someone needs to step up and have that big hit and get that big crowd in their favor.
They need a lead early tomorrow in the worst way. If they don't get ahead in the first 3 or 4 innings, the crowd is going to get more angry. And they have every right to be angry. And I agree. Like Seth says, I think Seth predicts they're going to win the next 3. Again, Seth, I don't think that's crazy. I think if you want to go off tonight, I'm kind of with Judo. I just think when I did the storylines, I picked the Cubs to win Game 1. So I'm not surprised the Cubs won the game. I'm surprised the way the Nats lost it. And surprised the way that they didn't really come to play. And you look at the numbers against Lester tomorrow. He pitched against them twice this year. Only gave up 4 runs, got no decisions in both games. One because Blake Trinan blew a save in June. And the other, the Nats got him out of the game, and Wieters hit the grand slam off of Edwards. So Lester hasn't dominated you, and he hasn't been great in the second half. ERA of about 4.46 and ERA over 4 in September. But it's really about the way he is in the big games. He's pitched many of them. This will be his 20th postseason start. And I can't really think of many bad John Lester postseason starts.
He was an integral part of 2 winning teams for 2 different franchises.
No, Seth. Seth asked, "Do we think DC sports teams are cursed?" No. Things that think that are really. I'm not going to say they're crazy. They're very cynical. I mean,
and they've earned the right to be cynical too.
They have a right to be cynical. There's no doubt. We're not saying that you can't be. There's no curse. This isn't the curse of the Billy Goat or the curse of the Bambino.
But as someone who grew up with a team that was quote unquote cursed, I go back to 1986 for a second. Bill Buckner took all the blame for what happened that night at Shea, but that was on John. That was bad. You want bad managing. John McNamara deserves most of the blame for what happened that night, and Grady Little should take all the blame for what happened at Yankee Stadium in 2003. What the hell were you going out there and using Timmy Wakefield as a closer for? You're throwing a knuckleball as a closer in the 11th inning of a 7th game? What the hell are you thinking? And so it's not cursing. It's as I curse on the air, it's a lack of execution and a lack of thinking under pressure. It's nothing to do with drunk Billy Goats and no net. And I think Ricky would agree with that. I mean, you root for teams that aren't always, you're a Knicks fan.
There's no curse. They're just very mediocre.
Right. But seriously, you can go down to it and say, look, this didn't happen. And we can tell you specifically what didn't happen in a certain situation. That has nothing to do with Cher having plastic surgery or what have you. It's
all right, so let's dive into some of the other games here before we have final thoughts in a little bit. Dodgers, by the way, still have not had an out, and they're up 4-0. So could be a long night in the desert. Well, if you're looking to stay up late for this morning, you might not have to. But I'll be fair. I'll start with the Yankees, who blew an 8-3 lead and lost to the Indians 9-8 in 13 innings, and Yankees got Corey Kluber out of the game in the 3rd inning. They had a 6-3 lead. Greg Bird hit a home run to make it 8-3 off of Clevenger, and it looked like the Yankees had the game won. Chad Green struggles. There was a play where Lonnie Chisenhall, they called a hit by pitch. It wasn't a hit by pitch. Joe Girardi didn't challenge. Lindor then hits a grand slam, makes it 8-7. Robertson gives the home run to Bruce in the 8th to tie it, and then Yan Gomes the walk-off single in the 13th. The one thing, though, I think this goes as the worst managerial comment of the night, and I haven't even seen Dusty's comments other than Pete Kurzel from Madsen saying Madsen stuck with Rizzo because Madsen has good numbers against lefties. So that's not a bad 204 lefties are against Madsen this year.
Yeah, I didn't have that much of a problem with that.
Okay. Matt Marone from ESPN. Joe Girardi did not challenge the Lonnie Chisenhall play because he doesn't like to take his pitcher out of rhythm. Are you kidding me?
That's as close as I've ever heard you swear on the air.
And I like Girardi. Believe me, but come on. You're trying to win a playoff game. You know what I don't care about? He's out of rhythm when he's in the dugout after an out. Oh my gosh.
So those are the sort of games that you think are kind of, if you're going to believe in curses. But Cleveland came and fought back. I mean, here's a game where the presumed Cy Young winner gets absolutely wrecked. One of those I sat there and watched and going, oh my goodness, this is the best thing that could have happened to the Yankees, and they lose. And we both have thought that both of the American League Series would be sweeps anyway. The Red Sox are absolutely no match for the Houston Astros, and Houston beat the Red Sox today 8-2. Altuve with his third homer. David Price, the only Red Sox pitcher who could find the strike zone. And sorry, I'm not available to go pitch on Sunday. I'm taking the day off.
4 RBIs for Carlos Correa.
Right, because
the Red Sox tried not pitching to Altuve. That didn't work.
No, you can't do that. You just can't do that. The Red Sox
even finished the third inning today.
They're just not that good.
No, and they're relying on former Nationals great Doug Fister to win Game 3, which Nats fans will tell you Doug Fister beat Madison Bumgarner in Game 3 5 years ago. So Doug Fister in Game 3's not a bad track record against, was it Brad Peacock for Houston?
It's Brad Peacock for Houston, yeah. Now, who were the Yankees?
We have Tanaka against Carrasco.
Well, Tanaka's not a terrible choice.
No, I don't think so. I think, but again, it will come down to, can they get over losing an 8-3 game and sitting on it for 24 hours?
CC gave you a great game too. At one point, he retired 11 batters in a row.
CC was good. Let me go back to the conversation with John. Depends on your definition of cursed. We have given both the talent and management to advance, but never at the same time. And again, I don't have John. I don't have an answer for that. It's a theme that we've talked about tonight. It comes down to the players. I mean, management has done all the right things they could possibly do.
You can't blame Rizzo for this.
Rizzo's not at fault. Dusty's not the brunt at fault. It comes down to the guys that you bring in, or your superstars, have to deliver. I mean, I look at the years that the Yankees didn't win those best of fives. They weren't winning after they lost in 0-1, they weren't winning best of fives for a while. I mean, sometimes if you don't get off to that great start, you're going to get into trouble. And that's,
look at those Braves teams from the 90s.
Exactly. That's the perfect example. You can have a mini run like Atlanta where you can win all these division titles and you run into bad matchups.
You could always tell when they would lose a game in the playoffs that they were done, because they just, I don't know if they never believed that they were going to lose, or they just never prepared for it. And so you could always tell at the start of an Atlanta series if they were going to win it or not. And, there's people have described Dusty to be like Bobby Cox in that way, that, once it starts to snowball. And, maybe that needs to be changed. But when you had a hardline manager like Matt Williams before, it backfired. I don't know what the solution is for that. And it comes down to it again. He made the right decision to go with Strasburg tonight, and Strasburg pitched the game of his life. It comes down to, he's not the one that made the error at third, and he's not the one that he's not swinging those bats.
Yeah, exactly. I know, John, I don't think the first round should be changed to best of 7.
No, I don't either.
Best of 5 is really what it should be. You'd be playing deep into November if you were doing best of 7.
The playoffs go on too long as it is anyway. Mm-hmm. You want to have some sort of, it's a divisional series. I mean, you're not going to go back to having 2 divisions. So you need to have some reward for winning the division. I mean, it's not the Nats' fault that they haven't played a meaningful game really since July 4th.
So I think to wrap it up a little bit, tomorrow's a must win. If they come out and play flat again, I mean, we said it last night. I said it at least. I sign up for a split. Gio wins game 2 tomorrow, I think you're in the driver's seat because you have Scherzer in game 3, who appears to be okay. You have a banged-up Arrieta in a game 4 against Tanner Roark. The Nats could turn this series all the way around with a win tomorrow. If they lose, ask him to win 3 straight, including beating a guy that they can't seem to figure out in Hendricks, is a really tall order. So tomorrow is a virtual must-win for the Nats.
Whoever wins tomorrow wins the series. It comes right down to it. And I think if they lose tomorrow, they get swept.
So it would really be a bad look on the Nats and a bad look on the pro Dusty Baker. It's sad to say it, but it's sadly going to be what's going to happen.
You are asking semi-injured Max Scherzer at Wrigley Field to hold off the defending world champions
in the afternoon, where the wind could play a huge factor. That game right now, it depends. If one of those series doesn't end in a sweep Sunday, it'll be at 4 o'clock or 3 o'clock Chicago time. And that's not a good time you want to play a game in Chicago. The wind could play a factor.
76 and sunny is the forecast right now for Chicago on Monday. But no, whoever wins tomorrow wins the series. I mean, also, for Washington's point of view, you had 2 games at home and you couldn't win. So you really expect to go to Chicago and win 2? You had all the creature comforts at home. You've been home for the last week. So yeah, tomorrow.
The only argument to that would be, can we just call a spade a spade? This team plays better on the road because there's less pressure on them on the road.
Absolutely.
I mean, maybe home field is maybe what they shouldn't have because they're the best road team in the National League, and they come home and they play totally different. I mean, that's what Dusty was trying to figure that all year, why they weren't that great in home games. They weren't great in home day games. Like, I'll look at the sample here real quick of just what the standings were in terms of home road splits.
They were 51 on the road.
It was like 50. It was 50 and of course MLB.com takes the home road. Either way, they had a lot of road wins and not that many home wins.
Right. But they need tomorrow. Tomorrow's a must win.
Mm-hmm. So again, tomorrow 5:30, TBS will have pregame at 4:30 with Casey Stern, Pedro Martinez, Gary Sheffield, Jimmy Rollins. Of course, Masson has their pregame show with Johnny Holiday, Ray Knight, FP, and Bob Carpenter. So you can check that out. I can't see if Dusty's made any of the comments. I don't believe so. I'm not seeing anything here. All right. So apparently, if Dusty makes comments, we'll probably find them out in like 10 minutes because
that's always what happens.
He's meeting with the mass media, so that would take a while. So we have takeaways, and Ron, I'm sure, is going to have some great takeaways tomorrow for the game. Drew will get you set for game 2 because Drew's going to be at game 2. So Drew, cheer really loud, bring a sign, noise. I don't care. Just whatever section you're in, Drew, make them really loud like first couple innings because I'm telling you, the crowd looked pumped first 3 innings. I was pumped watching it just by the way that they were reacting. So I think, again, it comes down to a big game, and your stars got to play. Harper's got to come through. Murphy's got to come through. Rendon, who's 3 for 20 last year in the post-divisional round, he's got to come through. Zimmerman's got to come through. Your stars got to play. Bryant came to play, got big hits. Rizzo got big hits. And we talked about it. If they don't contain Chris Bryant and Anthony Rizzo at the top of the lineup, they will lose this series because those are their 2 primary run-scoring options.
Yeah, Rizzo's pretty good, isn't he? Aren't they?
It's the Bryant-Rizzo combo. Never a good thing for the Cubs. So, again, you can follow us on Twitter at District on Deck or at Rickinator555. Follow Ron at Ron Juckett. Am I right?
Yes.
All right, good. You can like us on Facebook.
201 shows later, you finally got it.
Finally got it. There we go. You can like us on Facebook. Just search District on Deck, a little like button. All of our articles and DoDcast and everything are there. I also give this video a like and subscribe on the YouTube page, and hopefully we'll be in a better mood tomorrow. So yes. For all of us here at District on Deck, for Ron, I'm Ricky, saying hope you have a great rest of your night. If you're watching D-backs Dodgers, I guess enjoy that. And I will talk to you sometime around 9 o'clock, hopefully tomorrow night.
Good night.